Good day everyone, I'm Tiffany Emily Anticristo and we are the group 3. So here are my members and I'm going to report first about Asian regionalism, and there are regionalism, the ASEAN and the ASEAN integration, which will be discussed later by my members. So before that, I'm going to show you the key terms that are associated with Asian regionalism. So before we dig in to the definition of regionalism, let's go first to the key terms. Actually, there are two, regionalization and region. So let's go first to the regionalization. Regionalization is the process of dividing an area into smaller segments called regions. Because as we all know, the world is divided into not just continent but also regions. But when we say region, these are the group of countries located in the same geographical area. For example, Japan, China, Indonesia, and the Philippines, which are located within the same geographical area of Asia, which is Asia is a region and the largest and the most diverse continent of the world. So, what is regionalism? So, before that, let's go back to what is globalization. So, what is globalization? By the word itself, globalization, global. It means worldwide, international, the growing interdependence of our economy, like trading goods, technology, and services sa iba't ibang countries. But when we say regionalism, mo ni siya ang nag-focus sa isa ka region. Kung may problema sa isa ka region, dito ra mag-focus, dili na sa tanan. Because they are smaller compared to larger areas. Because of this, regionalism usually resolves to political separations, religious geography, cultural boundaries, linguistic regions, and other managerial divisions. But why do countries form regional organization? They form regional organization as a way of coping with the challenges of globalization like military defense, economic crisis, and resources. So, through globalization, na-introduce ang regionalism. So, after the Cold War between United States of America and former Soviet Union, what happened sa relationship after adto? So, there are three. So, first is resolving regional conflicts. So first, countries tend to rely on global platforms such as the United Nations and resolving regional conflicts, thus paving way for the emergence of peacekeeping initiatives and regional trade organizations. Regional trade organizations like sa Southeast Asia, sa America, sa Africa, and sa Europe. So nation nowadays are more aggregable. Aggregable, when we say aggregable, it means willing, at least as indicated by less profound armed conflicts and wars among nations. So, nation nowadays are more willing, more open, especially if you have the same goals sa your country. But, even though open na ang ibang countries, there are still conflicts present pa gyapon siya hantod kuman. Like for example, territorial disputes, which is diri sa Philippines dili na bag-o kay mismo diri sa ato sa Philippines na experience nato ning territorial disputes. But when we say pag sa mod ka country mag-dispute siya, territorial dispute sa country, power and the pride of your country pag makuha nimong isa ka butang. So, in the earlier years of human history, these misunderstandings or conflict of interest could have been resolved outright by bloody and massive wars. So, lahi ra ang process sa una and sa kuman. Sa una, which is, pag mag-conflict nila, is, kuha nila is through war. Kung dyan mga ni problema, war. Para, madali mahuman ang ila problema. Di parehas kuman na, through communication na, through politics. Istoryahan na nila para mas malesen ang problema and ma-resolve dagang diretso. So here are the existing territorial conflicts. Here are the examples. South China Sea territorial disputes. There's the Philippines, Senkaku Island, China versus Japan, Korean Peninsula, North Korea versus South Korea, Israel-Palestine conflict, Lakda territory, India versus Pakistan versus China, Priya-Vihir dispute, Thailand versus Cambodia. Number 2 is emergence of regional cooperations. So countries are becoming more open to collaborate with other countries in terms of economic development, in particular, and human development in general. So when we say economic development, example is the grants. Diyon, maghatag ka sa lain countries ng money to support like educational purposes, health purposes. Pwede sa mangutang, loans. Pero kung naglisod ang isa, you can also help, to develop assistance with each other. When we say human development, mo is yung scholarship. Yung scholarship sa lain-lain lugar to help the people. Like cultural exchange to people interaction. So, number 3 is nations' commitment to their cultural identities. According to Huntington, one of the consequences of the post-Cold War affairs is the shift of power from the West to groups of nations with similar cultural identity. Apparently, nations are becoming more committed to other nations which cultural identity they share. So, lang si Huntington, kung mas open ko kung mas pariha ko kamo ng goal, kung ang isa ka country pariha ng goal sa isa ka country, jay chance, jay possibility na mag-merge siya. For example, pariha ka mo ng culture, kung unay takimo, kung unay na anad sa isa ka countries. So, may possibility na mag-collaborate o mag-merge ang duha ka countries pag you have the same cultural identities. So, that's all my report, guys. And the second reporter, which is my member, is going to report next. That's all. Thank you. I hope you learned something.
Okay, guys, let's proceed. We're going to tackle hidden spaces of regionalism and degrees and regions. So, ining hidden spaces that way duha ka main subject, which is old regionalism and new regionalism. So, sa old regionalism, naglaong na bipolar such that it was produced in schism within opposing political alliance imposed by the superpowers, secures economic security within alliance. Specific to economic and political objectives focus only on nation states. So, taglaong diri sa old regionalism na kuan bali sida sa down sa trade gani nida same rasad gyapon sa new regionalism pero may kalainan sila. So, inani ang new regionalism. Multipolar as it is open for multilateral engagement and collaboration among countries, spontaneous and sought voluntary by constituent. Open in as much as it is multipolar, comprehensive and multidimensional, political, cultural, economic, social, involves non-state sector. So, okay, so sa old regionalism, ang ida trading is kuan bali sa taglawong dia schism. So, magkuan pa sila dahil split or division. So, kibali ining sa old regionalism dahil kita kalain-lain na lugar ang ida tagka trading. So sa pag-trade nila is under under government na trade or pagka-barter by city sila or nation states. While sa new regionalism, diri same ra sila ng process pero ang sa new regionalism, ang pagka-barter nila is bag-o na, makabago na kibali so new. So ang ila is multipolar. So sa multipolar taglaong na diri mas more countries ang ila tag trade or sa trading nila diri is murag hinamok gani ang ila pagka so dili kung sa isa ka isa ra ila tag tradean diri is bali kung mulang kita is all nation na ang nila. Then based on new regionalism na to kuman. So grabe naman ka-high-tech sa panahon lagi, naggamit na sila ng mga system. Amo daw na ang barter nila is mas paspas kay system ra kan man ang tagamit. Bisan ang mga non-state actors o mga non-state na mga sector na mga tao na waya ma-funded ng government, mahatagan na sab sila ng mga barter based ra sab sa pila ka kuanan na wala na mag-agi sa government barter, di ba? So awin nila mong basin maybe sab sa old regionalism dahil sa gyapon siguro na pero waya pa sila na noted, no? Pero sa kuman na note na sila na diri sa new regionalism. Sa old regionalism dahil siguro non-actors na barter gihapon pero waya pa sila karadaw siguro manote ato or diri sa new regionalism na sila na ano. Then proceed kita sa region as geographical unit. Region can be construed as a place, as a physical environment. For example, we can determine Asia as a region based on the land and water boundaries surrounding it. So sa taglaw diri region as geographical unit. So bisan sa mga geographic na area unit, so ano amon to, no? So geographical unit. So bisan gani sa mga risky place kuno mo kuan gyapon sila ng mga barter kay nagbarter man sila. So like aminin tagkuanan na land and water boundaries. So region as a social system. Next ito, no? Sa ikaduha, region as a social system. A region can be construed as conglomerate of people occupying a particular space and possessing unit dynamics of interaction. For instance, we can determine Asia as a region based on the group of people occupying it and the shared ancestry, language, and culture these people have. So sa region as a social system, so naglaong diri na pinaka-best kita na kuano sa Asia na dai ato na adapt gikan sa ato ancestry which is language and culture language and culture. So sa ato pagkakaroon sa pag mag-barter kita, as long as kabayo kita sa ah, daw tagamit na to na language for para makig-contact ng taga lain nation. So makabarter kita no kay dami ato isa ka language na nakasabot ang ato tagbarteran, which is English, di ba? Kung magbarter kita sa lain nasod, so di ato isa ka language para magkasinabot. So sa pagkakuman dili na lisod ang ano kay daon may ato isa ka language na tagamit. So amo to pwede na kita maka social social system na kuan magbarter. So sa ikatulo, region as organized cooperation. Sa region as organized cooperation, a region can be construed as a group of nations who agreed to take part form a formal organization. For instance, Southeast Asia is a region within Asia, and it has been formalized through memberships in the associations of Southeast Asian nation or ASEAN. So diri sa region as organized cooperation, so based sa the title no na region as organized cooperation. So kibali sa isa ka region dai ila tag-organize na cooperation. So kibali kung dai kalihokan sa ila nation which is cooperate sab ang kadaghanan. Kung unsay mas maayo, mas maradaw, ingana kibali. Unsay so kibali sa tanan sa daon na nation nag-take part sila. So dahil lang mga part na naghatag ng opinion para sa like manong kita na kung sa politically aside nato sila. So kung pareho sa ato kumana daya to president. Sige balik kung unay mga opinions and declaration ng mga tao. So i-open up nila sa president kung ano ang ilang mga gusto. So ang president kibali amo to ang mag-organize ng sakto na pamaagi para sa kadaghanan or para sa kalambuan. Amo na siya no. So next kita, region as civil society. A region can be construed as a network of cultural and social linkages among countries who voluntarily take part in cooperation among nations. So, there is a region as civil society. So, kibali, murag nakapattern na gani sila na daay maka-take part nan daon na butang. So diri dai kabali tagsa na nag-take part nan isa ka butang. So kibali plastado sila no. Nga na kibali. So next, region as an acting subject. A region can be construed as a group of nations concerned about peace, welfare, and prosperity of its people. So, region as an acting subject. So, sige bali, ang isa ka region, amo doon sila ang acting subject na sama to taglawon nako is they organize cooperation. So, kibali, sa kuman, acting subject man sila. Kibali, sa tanan lagi, na atong taglawon nako sa organized cooperation. So, kibali, tanan ang isa ka region is dapat nahibayo sila sa kung unoy nahimo or unoy na taghimo ng sa organization or sa region dapat nahibayo ang kadaghanan kung unsa ang tanan mga panglihok, no? So amora to tanan region as geographical unit amon tong suyod ng Hitness phases sa ang old regionalism and new regionalism, region as geographical unit, region as a social system, region as organized cooperation, region as a civil society, and region as an acting subject. So kung ikuha na to, gamayon lang nato sila, amo ra sa gibali, which is ang old and new unsa ilang pamaagi.
So, good morning, ma'am. I am Charelo Sulapas. I'm the part of this report. So, as to nature, globalization promotes the integration of economies across state borders all around the world. But regionalism is precisely the opposite because it is dividing an area into smaller segments. So, meaning that globalization as nature is being driven by technological changes, content-wide long-term growth and foreign investment and international sourcing. So, ang globalization is nagapromote siya ng isa ka integration sa isa ka ekonomiya. Also, nature is being driven by technological changes is may kalayan nga jud ang sa una og sa karon. So next, as to market, globalization, it allows Minico to trade an international level, so it allows free market but in regionalized system. Monopolies are more likely to develop as the world witnesses the globe shrinking with the advancement of technology and the increasing interdependence states have upon one another. It is hard not to detect the numerous weaknesses and unaddressed atrocities that lay within the system of globalized international relations, and briefly explanation that is response to the many faults the system of globalization contends. A new form of regionalism has arisen in the world to address what global multilateralism cannot. So, mao to ang sa as to market. So, as to cultural and societal relation, as a result of this high risk in globalization, states have lost control over the external relations of their societies when they are exposed to mutual cultural influences. Regionalism has responded to cultural globalization through an increase in cultural identity and the rest of regionalized parties. So next, as to aid, regionalism has responded to cultural globalization through an increase in cultural identity and the rest of regionalized parties. So therefore, it has been properly acquired. The regionalism is in fact a building block of achieving global peace and cohesiveness through its more specified and regulative approach. Regions help to protect public relations of globalization from negative impact and act as an independent subject of international relations. They can be as multipolar world theory, the theory of large species, the theory of convergence, and regional joint doctrine. So, maot ni ang as to aid. Ang regionalism is nag-responded sa isa culture or globalization through an increase in culture. So, as technological advances is naghatag or nag-invest ng isa ka government session or ang example ng ini as technological advances is ang transportation ng isa ka lugar. So maora to ma'am, thank you.
Ayun, no? Next na kita sa factor leading to the greater integration of the ASEAN regions. So, diri sa factors na the regional integration. The objectives of the agreement could range from economic to political to environment. And regional integration has been organized. So, amo doon ang daan diri sa factor leading and to the greater integration. So, uno kuno ang factor leading to the greater integration. So, based sa pagsulti kayo na, dahil tayo kakuha nila. So, sa regional integration is a process in which neighboring states enter an engagement in order to upgrade cooperation through common institution and rules. So, naay the process no na neighboring states sige bali murag nag-barter sila sa daon mga neighboring states ra. So daon kalapit bansa ra kay bali no. Nira. So sa ikaduha, the objectives of the agreement could range from economic to political environmental. Although it has typically taken the form and a political economy initiative where commercial interests are the focus for achieving broader socio-political and security objectives as defined by national governments. So, diri sa ikaduha, naglaong na bali na kay agreement under sa political. So, ang pagka-barter no, may kalabutan ang politika sa ini na barter. So, kibali secured and dai gadud security na mag-check or object sa mga object na para safe ang delivery way kuad no, para safe ang delivery. Then ikaduha ikatuyo, regional integration has been organized either via supranational institutional structures or through governmental decision making or combination of both. So amo to no sa ikatulo is same ba sa ako taglawong sa ikaduha na may kalabutan gadud ang politika. So ibali sa pagbarter nido is apil na kibali ang politika or government under government kibali sida na pagbarter. So kibali may kalabutan ang government kung uno ito tagbarter. So nahibayo ang government, di ba? So amurad to ang suyod ng factors leading to the greater integration of the ASEAN regions. So ang deliberation ng barter nida is under government no. So nahibayo ang government. So amad to sida ang factors. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Mark Wilson Masadlan from Group 3 and my topic is Asian regionalism. Asian regionalism. There are many regions in the world where regionalism can be observed. Asia among these regions where regional cooperations are emergent and becoming more influential. Hernandez 1996 mentioned specific trends which probably regional cooperations in the Asia Pacific regions. Number 1. Security challenges, internal conflict, terrorism, maritime security, and non-traditional threats such as natural disaster. Internal conflict, lain ang panloob sa una-una ng isa ka tawo, terrorism, example for the Philippines terrorism, NPA, CCP, and NDF. maritime security, magpatrol sa kanan sa dagat, kanan na mga, for example, mga warships na gikan sa lain countries na mo sulod sa territory ng Pilipinas na walay permission gikan sa government. Number 2, ecological breakdown. Situation where an ecosystem suffer a drastic, possibly permanent reduction in carrying capacity for all organisms, often resulting in mass extinction. Pag-antos sa ato ecosystem, possibly hindi na ma-permanent, ma-reduce ang pagdala ng capacity sa tanan mga organismo sanan pagresulta ini ng extinction. Number 3, demands for human resources. The process of estimating the future quantity and quality of people required. Prosesos sa pagtantya sa kaatubang og sa dami at kalidad na tagkinahanglan ng mga tawo. 5, international terrorism. Violent criminal acts committed by individuals or groups who are inspired by or associated with designated foreign terrorist organizations or nations. Kanang individual or mga grupo na maghimo og mga criminal acts such as mga pag-atake, mga pagpatay, mga pag-ambush or bisag unsa na mga criminal acts na buhaton ng mga terrorists. Number 6, epidemics. The rapid spread of disease to a large number of people in a given population within a short period of time. For example, coronavirus. Ang coronavirus nag-start sa China pag human dali ra siya ning kanat kay tungod dako ang ila population og ni kanat sab ang virus sa lain lugar kay tungod ang mga tawo mo fly to other countries. Number 7, drug trafficking. Illegal drug trade or drug trafficking is a global black market dedicated to the cultivation, manufacture, distribution, and sale of prohibited drugs. Kanang drug trafficking is a global na pwede siyang makaadto ang drugs sa lain-lain na mga lugar og makabaligya na mga ginadili na mga drugs.
Good day, ma'am. This is my report about dynamics of Asian regionalism. There are 3 types of dynamics of Asian regionalism. First is enhanced dialogue between citizens of various nations. Pag mo yung taog dialogue, it means communication. Kailangan na to i-enhance atong communication through other nation para magkasinabot ang tanan. Labi na karon madalas magkakaroon ng multilateral meeting yung mga leaders ng iba't ibang nation. Kinahanglan gyud nato maka-form taog dialogue or communication na magkasinabot ang tanan, or need nato mag-adjust so we can communicate with each other. Second is expanding intra-regional trade and investment. Yung mga financial market and interdependent economies, kailangan papalawakin yung pag-i-invest and pagtitrade within lang mismo sa region na sinasakupan. Third is increase connectivity. Na-increase yung level ng connectivity natin with others in a situation like paghimo og mga infrastructure project or maghatag og tabang sa mga nasalanta like bagyo, kalamidad or uban pa para may collaboration.
When discussing about Asian regionalism, one cannot veer away or change direction from discussing the evolution and dynamics of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Ang ASEAN, or Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is a regional grouping that promotes economic, political, and security cooperation among its 10 members, and they are Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. In the early 1960s, there was already an emerging organization among Philippines, Thailand, and the Republic of Malaya in what was called the Association of Southeast Asia or ASA. Before na ako explain ang Association of Southeast Asia or ASA, pay attention kita sa Republic of Malaya. Kaya natawag siya Malaya before siya natawag as Malaysia. Kay joy ijo origin sa Malay Kingdoms sa 18th century na subject sa British Empire. Tapos sa 1948, na-restructure ang Malaya tapos nagiging Federation of Malaya. After sa August 31, 1957, na-achieve niya ang independence. Tapos nag-unite sa British Crown colonies of North Borneo, Sarawak, and Singapore on September 16, 1963 para maging Malaysia. Pero sa August 1965, na-expelled ang Singapore sa Federation and naging separate, independent country. Nag-separate ang Singapore and Malaysia kayo'y deep political and economic differences between sa mga ruling parties ng Malaysia ug Singapore. So this is the Malaysia that we know now. Ang mga leaders sa una, before 1960, na nag-emerge ng organization called Association of Southeast Asia, kay sila ni Thanat Khoman sa Thailand, Felix Berto Serrano sa Philippines, Tunku Abdul Rahman sa Malaya. The articulated goal of this regionalism process was cultural and economic cooperation. There were also political goals gleaned, meaning na obtain or gather. Some challenges were encountered from its inception sa beginning ng EG establishment, such as lack of confidence from other Southeast Asian nations, presumed political goals, and the dissent or disagreement from other states because of their alignment with the Western Bloc. Kaganina, wala pa man ako na explain ang ASA or Association of Southeast Asia, kaya gi-elaborate pa na ako ang mga distrust or disagreements between political parties. Kay before si ASEAN, ang nag-una kay ang ASA, a group consisting of Thailand, the Philippines, and kaganina na explain na ako, Malaya. Nagiging failure ang ASA, kaya conflict and disagreement ang mga countries, specifically sa Malaya and the Philippines. So ASA was replaced by ASEAN in 1961 under the banner of cooperative peace and prosperity. In 1963, another confederation or partnership was formed, convened or brought together by then President Diosdado Macapagal. This was referred to as Mafilindo, Great Malayan Confederation involving Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, which aimed to unite nations of Malay origins. This did not last very long and was terminated by Indonesia-Malaysia Konfrontasi, the former's policy arguing against the formation of the Federation of Malaysia, Mafilindo, Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, was initially proposed as a realization to our Filipino national hero na si Dr. Jose Rizal about his dream or goal na sana ma-unite ang Malay people or nations of Malay origins na divided manggud ta because of colonial frontiers or mga nag-colonize sa ato because they wanted to practice domination or colonialization. Pero wala ini nagdugay kaysa konfrontasi, as mentioned before, also called Borneo Confrontation, between sa Indonesia and Malaysia between 1963 to 1966, kay mo against man ang Indonesia sa creation ng Federation of Malaysia. After na-lose ng power si Sukarno in October 1965, ang first president ng Indonesia from 1945 to 1967 kay na dispute ang ilagi panghimo still ended peacefully and then naborn na ang Malaysia. 4 years after, representatives from Indonesia and Singapore with those from 3 ASA member states engaged in informal discussions in a coastal resort in Bang Sien, where they formulated the idea of a Southeast Asian cooperation. Thus, in August 8, 1967, these foreign ministers sat down in Bangkok, Thailand, and signed the ASEAN Declaration, also referred to as the Founding Fathers of ASEAN. The 5 ministers present were Adam Malik of Indonesia, Narciso R. Ramos of the Philippines, Tun Abdul Razak of Malaysia, S. Raharatnam of Singapore, Thanat Khoman of Thailand. But was ASEAN a necessary trajectory to take among Southeast Asian nations? Thanat Khoman, one of the founding fathers, articulated why Southeast Asia needed an organization for cooperation. First, the cooperation will repel any new colonial powers from stepping in after old colonizers withdrew. Second, it is strategic to work with neighbors with shared interest and identity than with allies from distant lands. A good example of this is SEATO, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Example ini siya na international organization for collective defense sa Southeast Asia. Ang purpose niya kay mag-prevent ng communism from gaining ground in the region. Now keep in mind, wala na sa ato module. That's just an example. Third, harnessing the strengths of members states will provide an advantage in dealing with bigger powers in potential conflicts. Most importantly, cooperation and integration enable achievement of goals which could not be accomplished alone. S. Raharatnam profoundly described what set ASEAN apart from its Asian counterparts. He said, "To To compare ASEAN with the so-called little dragons of Asia is to compare unrelated political species. The little dragons are lone wolves, hunting separately. They lack collective strength or awareness. With them, it is a case of each wolf for itself. In the case of ASEAN, as integration proceeds, its strength will be the cohesiveness of over 300 million people with far greater resources than any of the lone baby dragons. Ang inina-quote ni Ezra Haratnam kay nag-emphasize and elaborate sa differences sa ASEAN and other non-ASEAN countries na diyaw'y iba na nag-ijahayra, nag-develop sa ila country or nation individually kaysa sa mga less advantaged na part sa ASEAN na ang members kay pwede ra mag-tinabangay. The little dragons of Asia he was referring here were the economies of Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, which at that time was experiencing fast-paced industrialization and economic growth. Ini ang mga little dragons sa Asia na separate sa ASEAN na grabe ila growth and development sa ila industry and economy. While we already know the purpose of ASEAN, what are their principles? Well, the principles of the ASEAN are enshrined or preserved in the ASEAN Declaration of 1967, also referred to as Bangkok Declaration. The opening section of the declaration provided a situationer of Southeast Asia's geopolitical or geopolitics, the study of the effects of Earth's geography on politics and international relations, and economic affairs at the time. Existence of shared problems and interests. Need for unity and cooperation, shared aspirations and ideals, peace, progress, and prosperity, shared responsibility for economic and social responsibility. What about the presence of foreign bases as temporary and with concurrence from countries concerned? The following section contains the declarations as follows: Establishment of ASEAN, an articulation of the aims and purpose of ASEAN, a list of strategies and mechanisms to enable the achievement of goals, a statement of openness for membership, an articulation of ASEAN as a collective representation of member states. Thank you everyone for listening. These are the websites and resources where I got my pictures and visuals from, where we will now move on to the next reporter.
Good afternoon, ma'am, and good afternoon, classmates. By the way, my name is Jeannie Carlos Bicog, and I will be the reporter of ASEAN Integration. Again, ASEAN stands for Association of Southeast Asian Nations. ASEAN integration has become a buzzword in recent years, propelling conversations among experts in various disciplines and perhaps eliciting questions among the general public. What really is integration and what is ASEAN integration? In a simple terms, ito yung pagsasama o pag-iisa sa mga iba't ibang larangan ng pampulitika, pang-ekonomiya at panlipunan. And since the Philippines is one of the members of Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN, masasabi ba natin na sapat ang kamalayan natin bilang isang Pilipino o bilang isang mamamayan sa mga kaganapan nitong ASEAN integration at sa mga maaaring epekto nito sa ating kapalaran ng ating bansa? Although the meaning and the purpose of the ASEAN Economic Community or AEC is ambiguous to ordinary citizens. We are presuming that the present and the past administration know of the big transformation that is to come, not only in our country's economy but also in our politics. Philippines is one of the 10 member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN. Ito ay isang organisasyong politikal at pang-ekonomiko. ASEAN is consisted of the following countries. We have Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines. According to the blueprint, our country will enter a state of regional economic integration. Sa madaling sabi, ito ay ang pagsasanib ng ekonomiya ng 10 bansa na kasapi ng ASEAN upang makamit ang layuning itatag ang isang ASEAN Economic Community o AEC. AEC has the following characteristic. First, we have single market and production. We have free flow of goods. It means ito ay malayang daluyan ng mga produkto. Also, we have services, investment, capital, and skilled labor. With this condition, inaasahan natin ang pagtatanggal ng mga taripa and non-tariff barriers. Second, competitive economic region. Also have introduction of fair competition policy, consumer protection, intellectual property rights, infrastructure development, taxation, and e-commerce. Third, equitable economic outcomes, which is also have developing small and medium enterprises, initiative for ASEAN integration, and the last one of the characteristic of AEC is integration into the global economy, which is maintaining ASEAN centrality, participation in the global supply networks. Thank you.